So, do you miss being a cop?
I do what I don't. I miss the camaraderie that I had with the cops, with the friends we made and the families that we made. We all were very close and watched each other's back. I gotta be honest with you though, at 48 years old, I do not miss chasing anybody up train tracks, nor do I miss losing my earrings. All in all, I think I put in my time, and 19 and a quarter years was enough for me.
What is your name and where are you currently employed?
My name is Debbie and I currently work in the footwear industry.
You are a former NYPD officer, correct?
That's correct.
Before you left the force, what ranking were you?
When I left the force, I was a second grade detective.
And how long did it take you before you became a second grade detective?
Well, it took me, I got on the force in February 1994, and then as a rank of a police officer, and then in July of '99 I got promoted to detective specialist, and then in October of 2003 I got promoted to detective second grade.
What made you want to become a cop?
I never really wanted to become a cop, like I hadn't thought about it, although my Uncle Terry was a detective in the city, so he had a lot of really good stories, so it piqued my interest, but not enough to actually make me want to be a cop. At the time, I was working in a beer distributor over in the Bronx, and my friend Joenia also worked there, and she was going to go take the police test, and I was kind of jealous that she was going to take the test and I wasn't, so I just went and I paid my $15. I took the test, and 4 years later they called me and I became a cop.
So it was on the whim. You could have been the queen of beer distributors.
I probably could have.
Wasn't for Joenia.
I probably could have owned the beer distributor by now, but instead I lived the glorified life of an NYPD detective.
How dangerous is it being a New York City police officer?
I think it's kind of dangerous. I think you have to be on your toes most times, almost all the time. But I also think that there are other jobs that are equally as dangerous. I mean, a cab driver is probably equally as dangerous as a police officer, and they don't even have a firearm to protect themselves. I just think you have to be really cautious, and you have to be on your A game at all times. And you just have to, safety's always first.
Did the people who lived in the area where your precinct was located have an affinity towards you?
They did. In the beginning, they had an affinity, well, the good citizens that lived in the neighborhood, the non-drug dealers and the law-abiding citizens had an affinity towards, I think, most cops, because they wanted their kids to grow up in a safe neighborhood and they wanted to be able to walk in the street. But after I left patrol back in '96, I joined the Street Narcotics Enforcement Unit, and that was a very, very big problem in the precinct that I worked. So I developed a very close bond with many of the citizens in the community, because they had information, they would want to tell us, and they didn't want to be known, to be known. And so we would hand out cards and put posters up, and we had an anonymous hotline at the precinct that they used to call, and they'd give us tips if they hit a gun, or if they were selling drugs, or if there was prostitution. And then, shortly after they would give the information, we would respond there, no matter what, no matter how trivial it sounded, or no matter how, maybe it wasn't even true. We always went there just so that they could always see that they made a complaint, we showed up, and that continued on and on and on. Honestly, I had mad love in the community.
Did your colleagues ever treat you any differently because you were a female officer?
I wouldn't say they treated me differently because I was a female, but I will say that when we first got out of the police academy, that there was definitely, you had to prove yourself being a female, and understandably why. Nobody wants to work with someone who's slower than you, who's not as strong as you, whatever. So I had gotten some good advice early on when I got out of the police academy from a good friend of mine, and she said the one thing that you have to do, so it was back in '94, she goes, lock everybody up. Lock up as many people as you can, legitimately of course. Don't be afraid to put handcuffs on people, and that's what I did from the very beginning. I went out there and I was aggressive from the get-go, and I got the respect from almost every male cop that was in my precinct, and none of them had a hesitation to work with me. And so for myself, I would have to say no.
So basically you earned your chops. It wasn't like they were handed to you or anything like that. No special favors for you.
Well, there was always a I don't know if it's so much a myth or if it's a truth, but for me, it's always a joke when females back in the day, when they got on the job, you either would rise in the ranks or get a promotion. There were two ways that you could do it. You could either sleep your way to the top or you could not sleep your way to the top. So I chose not to sleep my way to the top, and went out in the street, went out with the guys, wasn't afraid to put my uniform on and go out there. And there were a lot of females, some that were very good at what they did, but they stayed inside the precinct and they were secretaries, and that just wasn't the path that I chose.
You wanted to be on the streets, you wanted to be where the action was.
Hackney and Lacey, baby.
I know you must have plenty of stories that happened out here in the streets for you. Anything that you maybe want to share with us?
If you had more time on the tape, I have a lot of stories to share. Maybe another time, but what's funny is there was a really good story that happened right up the block, 240 to 241 on White Plains Road. It's a pretty good story. So one day we were doing the Street Narcotics Enforcement Unit, and that day I was part of the apprehension team with my partner Ed. We were watching the strip of the road on White Plains Road, and the girl that was in the observation post, she had already put over a description of 3 buyers who bought crack cocaine. We had arrested them already, they were in the police van. All of a sudden, the girl in the observation post told us the dealer's leaving, and he walked up White Plains Road towards the train station. So me and Ed, we drove the marked police van around, pulled it up to the foot of the train station, we ran up to the top of the train tracks, and by the time we got to the top of the train tracks, the guy was standing there in the on guard position, like I'm not gonna go. So my partner Ed took out his radio to call for backup. The guy immediately grabbed his radio, he disassembled his radio and dropped it on the floor. Fight ensued. The guy just refused to be handcuffed. We finally got one handcuff on him. We got him down to the ground. We were sitting on top of him. He was able to catch his breath. He went to get back up. So at that point, we were trying to get the other cuff on him. We just absolutely couldn't do it. He was a big dude. So we looked over, and there was a train conductor who was getting off his shift in his uniform, and he was like 500 pounds. So I was like, come on, get over here, sit on this guy. And he comes waddling over, he sits on him. So we were able to get the guy back down on the ground and get his other handcuff behind his back. And somehow he wiggled it out. The conductor guy got off and went to walk away. My hair was hanging out in the clip. Everyone was out of breath. I screamed at the train conductor, come get back over here, he's not cuffed yet. He comes back over, he sits on him, we get the 2 cuffs on him, and that was pretty much it. We go down to the police van, we put the prisoner in the van, and at that point he was apologetic because he realized after the whole battle ensued that one of my earrings was lost that my cousin had given to me. So he was saying, oh, Miss Debbie, I'll buy you new earrings, and I'm so sorry, and whatnot. So my partner Ed actually went back up to the train track like 15 minutes later, and he actually found my earring. So it turned out to be a good day.
Nice.